Sharon's son, George, shares his story that will enlighten, inspire, and encourage greater awareness of a disease that affects millions worldwide. Today, my guest is Dr. George Ackerman. He is the founder of TogetherForSharon. With a diverse professional background spanning law, police, and education, George's life took a poignant turn when he lost his mother, Sharon Riff Ackerman, to Parkinson's disease on the very first day of 2020. This loss gave him a deep-rooted passion to want to make a difference. To honor his mother's memory and further the cause of Parkinson's awareness, George launched TogetherForSharon. Today, this initiative is accessible, has touched thousands, and is spreading awareness about Parkinson's disease across the nation. In his commitment to the cause, George has interviewed over 250 individuals from the Parkinson's community, including prominent neurologists, leading writers, and even Muhammad Ali's daughter, aiming to bring their unique stories and perspectives to the forefront. This journey has not only been about raising awareness, but also about sharing a message of hope, resilience, and the collective dream of a world without Parkinson's, and how each one of us can contribute to the cause. Here is my interview with Dr. George Ackerman. I'm happy to welcome Sharon's son, George, as he is going to share with us about the personal journey that he's been on. George, thank you for joining me. I can tell you are so passionate about keeping the memory of your mother alive and how she affected your life. Thank you for being here.
Thank you and all your listeners too for giving me an opportunity to share my mother's journey and mine as her caretaker through a battle with Parkinson's disease.
Yes, thank you. And I know that this has motivated you to spread awareness, have a mission, and to create Together for Sharon. Can you tell us more about that personal journey that you went on and how the loss of your mom has really motivated you to this advocacy?
Sadly, 3 years ago, and ironically on 1/1/2020, which is really odd, that
Yeah,
the only good news is she missed COVID, but
right.
unfortunately, she lost her battle and ours with Parkinson's disease. The last year of her life was probably one of the toughest I've ever seen any individual endure, whether in my own personal experience and my work through law enforcement and being a lawyer, attorney, and even in studying through many tough situations. I've never seen anyone have as much courage and hope, but it was unfortunately taken, too quickly. We found out she had Parkinson's about 15 years prior to 2020, and then she was able to live a nice life. Didn't affect her badly, except the ability to use her left arm for some time. But we could still, have a regular life. She could still drive and be independent. But that last year was when everything kind of went downward. Hopefully, we'll get to that a little later. But
Yeah.
I'm a kind of person that wants to remember, and she was my best friend. We had an odd, relationship. I spoke to her several times a day. We actually bought a home now, which we were going to move her in with us. Although I was kind of tentative, just because I'm not a expert at dementia and Parkinson's, and it was
Mhm.
very difficult to help her and deal with a lot of the side effects from emotional to physical to even some of the psychological. But I would have risked it. I always swore to her, and she made me swear that we never, put her in a home,
Mm.
and invested a lot in trying to hope that she would be with us for many years to come.
Yeah, you went through a lot. It's so hard when we see the people we love the most have to go through so much challenge. And then I'm sure when you first heard the diagnosis, there's that fear of the unknown of how will her health progress? What will we have to face? How do we do this as a family? Can you remember did you have some of those emotions as you were hearing of the diagnosis?
Fortunately, the year 1999, she tried to go to a study because I'm the kind of person also that doesn't ever want to regret things in life. But we tried everything. We tried, 15 doctors. We tried licensed medical marijuana. It didn't work. We tried, therapies, this therapy, that, everything. We tried
Mhm.
home care, this care. I had to fire several companies because aides just weren't qualified. And Also, she had dementia on top of Parkinson's. So sometimes she thought individuals were harming her when
Mm,
they weren't. I had to install video cameras because my own law enforcement side said maybe she's right. So, we had a lot of difficulties. Every day seemed like another challenge. But,
mm,
towards the beginning, uh, we weren't aware of what Parkinson's is. We never needed to because it wasn't really challenging at that point. But
right.
she went to school again. I don't name them, but it wasn't their fault. But she wanted to do a trial to see if maybe that would help. Unfortunately, she came back and I got a call, emergency call. And I'm used to emergency calls, but not from my own family.
Yeah.
At 4 a.m. to rush over to my mother's house. She had been moving out her furniture from our house at 4 a.m. into the street, and when I got there, it was really like heartbroken because I didn't even know what to expect, what was going on. I didn't even know what happened. It seemed like they changed her medicine drastically, and it psychologically affected her. And
Mm,
she was in fear. She thought somebody was in the house trying to harm her. I rushed her to the hospital. They said if I didn't get her there that day, she wouldn't have made it. They found out she had a UTI infection and all these things that I'm not a medical doctor and I didn't
mm,
even know. I was kind of thrown into this world. The saddest time in my life was that moment, but one other when I went back to her home that same night, pick up some of her things. I often tell the story, but her room was full of yellow post-it notes, regular that we use every day. And on the notes, almost broke my heart. There were names of people and animals who we've had throughout our life, and on them was who was actually still alive, who is physically in reality there, and who might not even be, here
mm,
anymore. So
mhm.
showed to me really the significance of what Parkinson's and dementia does, the side effects, and how I had to really drop my life at that second and take over hers to help her in any way I could.
Yeah, it's so hard to see the people we love going through that, especially when it doesn't look or resemble like anything you've had to experience before. So I have compassion for that. I'm so sorry that you had to walk through that and navigate that. I'm sure it gave you so much strength and even more love for your mom as you needed to come alongside her. You talked about not really knowing what Parkinson's disease was. For our listeners, can you share what is Parkinson's disease and how does it affect the nervous system? What are the causes? How many people are affected? I know that's a lot of questions, but I'm sure as you share, we'll get to those answers.
I'm still learning because I'm out there advocating. I only know and can speak from my experiences.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, they state that there's a million individuals in the United States that has Parkinson's, and unfortunately, it's growing. What I was shocked to find is 4 months ago, I wasn't aware of something called the Parkinson's World Congress, and that's an organization that's a volunteer, and they actually come together every 2 years. This year it was in Barcelona, Spain. I couldn't attend, but thanks to social media, like how we met, I was able to watch a lot of it, and so they had over 4,000 individuals. But I learned that Parkinson's affects 10 million people around the world.
Mm,
Time I had Together for Sharon, it's the website, and it's just me. It's not some people think it's a big or it's just me. But
mm,
I don't sleep some nights thinking of wishing my mother was here and
right.
trying to find ways that others won't have to go through this. But so Together for Sharon was just out there. It was great. It was just a memory of my mother, but it was just kind of, not alive to me. So I thought, what better way after seeing that this disease affects people around the world than to
Mm,
try to interview other individuals and share their story. And my dream and goal was if I could just get one person to learn about what they're doing. Like they have punching for Parkinson's, they have riding for Parkinson's, driving for it's like it's really incredible. The problem is no one knows about it.
yeah.
So I started just 2 months ago doing interviews, and it kind of went kind of viral in a way. I've interviewed over 250 people. I'm kind
Incredible.
of decided to cut back because it's just, as you know, it's very.
It's a
And
lot
I've
of work. Yeah.
the other day actually interviewed Muhammad Ali's daughter, so it's been coming like really worldwide. And I don't want anything. And I always joke and say, if someone want, even with you, if you want to interview me or you'll interview or I'll interview you, I want nothing in return because that's
Yeah.
not what this is about. I've also had the great opportunity recently to work with Michael J. Fox Foundation to speak to my local representatives and representing the first ever in the United States Congress-funded bill to end Parkinson's disease, and sadly, we have nothing. That's the first one.
Mm.
Uh, was able to speak to my county commission, so I spoke in front of the board. There were about 7 or 8 individuals, and it's for the entire county of Palm Beach, which is one of the larger ones in the U.S. Who a lot of individuals are elderly in Palm Beach and are affected by Parkinson. But I got to give a little speech there, so I'm starting to get out there a little more, and they're all on my website if anybody wants to listen. But those are some of the things I've been doing. Parkinson's affects individuals very differently. That's why it's very tough question, even for a doctor
Mm.
to probably answer. What my mother went through is different. She didn't have the external tremor that you might see if you see the movie with Michael J. Fox, which I really recommend. It really helps with awareness too around the world. But she had trouble with her left arm stiffness. So there was a point where she couldn't really go out to dinner with us anymore. So we would just eat at our house because she couldn't really cut the food.
Mhm.
Then it also physically, and she was again independent, lived alone, drove, shopped, loved shopping and getting her chocolate cake. At
Oh,
the end of life, I decided we're not good. We tried to do healthy, and I'm like, forget it, let's just
oh,
get her as much.
just enjoy it. Yeah, be in the moment.
Yeah, so it was the physical. Unfortunately, the last year she just declined. Like she was a very healthy, strong woman physically, never had any medical issues, and her weight just kept getting like lower and lower. She
Mm.
went from walking to a walker, from the walker to a wheelchair, and finally she just couldn't walk. So it was really a tough situation. So that's the physical. It also affected mentally. My mother was the sweetest, kindest, nicest person. I wouldn't be who I am today if she hadn't sacrificed her life for me, raising me.
Mm.
But so the emotional was tough because one day I remember she actually pulled, like threw a light fixture down, and she's not violent, but she was so frustrated,
Mhm.
and you can get angry. So you see all different types of emotions from Parkinson. And then we also have the neurological, which you can't see, but it affects the brain. So it's really a neurological disease. And again, I won't comment much more on the medical, but those some of the big things. So it's emotional, physical, mental, and that's just for the person who diagnosed going through it.
Mhm.
Another podcast would be for the caretaker, because I could tell you I might be a cop, lawyer, and professor, and I've gone through a lot of challenges. I've even passed the oral board for the FBI, which is not easy. And I've spoke for a lot of people. I've done a lot of things in my life, but never, anything as a caretaker to have to go through that. So hopefully that kind of, I mean, there's just so much. So
Right.
you wouldn't want to talk to me because I have like 20 hours to,
Oh,
and
I'm sure.
one thing is I'm actually writing my first book on this. I've written books on other things, nothing to do with Parkinson. It's
Hmm.
going to be a journey of a son who lost their mother and best friend. But actually, one tough thing was I kept my own journal, and I might have only written a few sentences or a paragraph, but
Mm.
every day that last year, I documented by video and film and just handwriting or typing what happened and what I was going through. It was not easy. The video I'll never share because I don't think you want to be remembered like that.
Yeah.
But I want to share the written part, and you'll see my struggles and things. And it's not easy, but it's probably gonna take another year to get it out. We finished chapter one, but it's
Oh,
a that's one way I recommend people, if you're going through this, is to write a journal. And I'm 6'2", big guy, 200
right.
pounds, and you wouldn't think of me as right, but I did feel alone.
Yeah.
Thankfully, I have an incredible wife, and if you have time, check out. We have a podcast we just started, trying to be like you.
Oh,
It's
good, good. The more the merrier. It takes the collective. It does.
too, but but it's really helps, to keep your sanity, I guess,
Hmm.
to talk to someone. But I had my wife, but did feel alone. My father, they were divorced, but he was in New York, so he couldn't really help. And my other family, they try, but it's nothing like what I kind of went through alone with her. When
Mm.
you're sitting there, sitting with a pen and paper, trying to check off lists of what we can do, and we got to the point where we had nothing left.
Yeah, well, that's so therapeutic when we can write down our thoughts that we're really feeling in the moment. If we don't have, it sounds like you did have a support system in your wife, but I think it's so important to have a place to share that. And a journal is a safe place, right? You can look back and you can also share eventually if you want to. But that is a very healing way to process some emotion. And the caregiver side, I'm sure we're going to touch on that today because that is a big part of your story. You talked about your mom didn't have maybe those typical symptoms of Parkinson's, and the progression can be slow over time. For you and your family, how did you discover and how did she decide to pursue getting that diagnosis? Were there things leading up to that you had concern about or she had concern about?
Yeah, my mother was a strong woman, didn't really share, and told us to worry more about ourselves. Like a funny thing is, even Together for Sharon or me doing this today, she would say, "George, don't waste your time. Go
Oh,
do she want, and the one thing that was the most heartbreaking, which even now is tough to say, is her favorite time. All of our favorite time was Sunday morning. She'd come over, she'd blow bubbles in the backyard. She had three of my children, three grandkids, and throughout
mm,
the ordeal, the last year, she always said, "George, I'm not gonna stop fighting because I want to be there for my grandkids." And
yeah,
unfortunately, she isn't. But that was she was on. They actually had long-term hospice, which is very rare. It's a new thing they're starting, and we were lucky to qualify in a way
right.
because without it, we didn't have like a medical nurse. She would come over once a week, tell us the medicine. The problem is you have other people, you don't really know if they're giving the medicines right, the right amount. Just incredible. It's like it's more than a full time job on top of your full time job.
Right.
But again, she might have been diagnosed 15 years earlier, but I wasn't involved because I was younger. I was in,
Hmm.
I believe, even or in school. But she didn't complain. Like she never complained, so we didn't really know anything. I think they died the way medical doctors I read on it. They diagnoses. They do a variety of tests since there's no specific test for Parkinson,
Mm,
and the individual qualifies for all the symptoms, and then that's how they know it's likely Parkinson. But there are things that are similar to Parkinson's that are there are a lot of people who are misdiagnosed, which is also a major problem because when my mother passed, I had literal 10 garbage bags full of medicine. It was horrible. Like no, so if you're diagnosed or misdiagnosed and
mm,
you're taking these medicines, it probably can also be damaging. So not until really the last few years did I even know about it, but I still never, and I blame myself. Challenge myself to even learn it because again it wasn't really we never dreamt it would take our life. They
right.
always tell Parkinson's you could live till 85 or later. You don't
Hmm.
die with it. You die with it but not from it.
Mm,
My mother had other illnesses at all, so there's a chance she probably did pass due to the complications. I won't argue that, but
right.
she didn't have any other medical conditions.
Yeah. And you talked about, her emotions had changed, right? She was always really happy. What are some of those emotional and psychological challenges faced? I know you can speak to your mom, and I don't know in all your interviews if you've learned about other ways that people manage that.
Yeah, the worst thing that brings a memory of the number one problem is the Parkinson's causes delusions and hallucinations. And those are two areas I often forget to talk about just because maybe
Mm,
my mind's saying I don't want to talk about it. But those are big ones that people need to understand. So when I interviewed Muhammad Ali's daughter the other day, she had a similar story where he would actually want to tear pictures out of magazines and no one could understand why, and he got angry because they didn't understand. They were kind of making fun of him. So when they actually decided as a family to tear the pictures with him, he was accepted. So my mother, I'll never forget, one day it was over, it was a morning, and she was having an episode, but she was hugging pillows and my daughter was there, and she thought the pillows were my daughter, and it was really like
mm,
heartbreaking because there's nothing you can do. So it just shows that hallucination. She not wasn't aware, and this is not the whole day after she took medicine. She was okay, but
mhm,
there were times throughout the day where either she was very panicking, so scared that someone's going to harm her. We had to remove her phone towards the end because she called the police, and they showed up. Also, when you go in the long-term hospice, they take away physical therapy, which is really not it's horrible
mm,
because the only thing a Parkinson's patient or individual with diagnosed has is the ability to move. Like that's the big when I do walks, we talk about optimism, but you want to move. So walking's incredible. Boxing, they have so many incredible things out there. My mother didn't do them because we weren't aware, and it was too late by the time we
mm,
tried to learn about them. But there's something
mhm,
called Rock Steady Boxing. It's national. And so moving is important. Well, if you stop physical therapy, you can't do that. That was like a heartbreaking moment. They did offer, like therapy of music. So I had a great opportunity the week before she passed. It's on our website. If you scroll to the bottom of the main page, I played guitar for 15, 20 years, more for fun.
Mm,
But I was able to sit with the individual who did the music therapy, and together we played Cats, it's Memory from the Broadway show
mm,
Cats. My mother
mm-hmm.
see that as a little child in New York, where I'm from, on Broadway. So the last time she really ever spoke was in that video. You won't see her, but you at the end she says she loved it. That was like literally the last time she was able to speak. The last week
Wow.
of her life, I don't talk much about, but she was really not alive.
Mm-hmm.
Florida doesn't have laws like death with dignity, which is a
Mm-hmm.
very, and it's only in certain states like New Jersey. You have to be a resident. But I find, unfortunately, the only negative I have to say is that in the United States, some states treat our animals better than our loved ones. And
Mm,
I wish we could have helped her and not have to suffer, because for a
right.
whole week, she just suffered. She didn't speak, move. It was
Mm,
just a heartbeat.
yeah,
And again, I only share that because they need to do more legislature.
right.
Florida looking into it, but that's also controversial. So I just telling from my view what we
Yeah.
would have.
Yeah, it is heartbreaking. It is heartbreaking. And I think until we're in those moments, we can't say what our choices would be, those decisions. You talked about, there's not the cure for Parkinson's, and you wish you would have known about regular exercise or things earlier. So, part of that, I think you sharing is creating that awareness, right, of how important it is to do those things early. Did you find any other treatments that were successful for your family that helped manage symptoms, interventions that you kind of held on to as being helpful?
I mean, I just think having loved ones around, like she loved when the
Mm-hmm.
kids were over. I have at the time they were about like two, maybe 6 and 7. So she loved
Mm-hmm.
when they were around because they would jump all over, and they're loud. So she liked that. We actually we bought her own little house across the street because we thought, and it had a beautiful little lake, like, and I put everything together like brand new.
Mm,
And we just dreamt for 10 years at least she would be able to sit out there and relax and enjoy the rest of her life.
yeah.
But it was taken from her because of this horrible disease. But so, that was one another thing that also kind of haunts me. But
Yeah.
yeah, there's not much, but that's the main thing, is just being with the children. Not much really helped for us for Parkinson's. I mean, again, the medicine changed so much. I remember pulling a doctor into another room when she wasn't around, saying, like, what do I do? Because I don't want her to die. And he just had no answer. A lot, they just don't have answers. So
Yeah.
she even asked, that's the toughest thing in my life is when my mother said, is she going to die from this? And I didn't lie, I just said, we don't know. And,
Mm-hmm.
sleep at night thinking about that. Also, even going like with my wife on a date or vacation, I couldn't do it. So for that last year,
Mm,
it was like she would call me 24/7, and I didn't mind, but some of the stuff she needed or wanted, I couldn't help. If she
yeah.
needed food, I got it in 3 seconds. If she needed some kind of support, I was there. But there's just some things, unfortunately. Also, her toes curled a lot. She had fibromyalgia, so she did have side effects from all this. But I think the medicines, they might want to intent us to help, but they
Mm-hmm.
definitely mess you up even more. She didn't have the external tremors, but she said she did have the internal. So it's it's horrible disease because people don't understand. As a law enforcement officer, even in the academy, I remember reading, and there was a question on the test about you pull someone over for a DUI, but you have to realize it might not be drunk driving,
Yeah.
Parkinson's. So that's a big problem too in the police field. The individuals just don't know, and then it can end up being a bad situation when it could have, if they had understood. So
Mm-hmm.
that's something that needs to be, more awareness for.
Yeah.
But there's just many areas and aspects of just I don't have the time. I wish I could to reach, everybody.
Yeah, yeah. I could see that how not only as a police officer you're managing things that are happening in the society of rules breaking or whatnot, but it's also you're encountering people that have health conditions that can impact their judgment or their motor skills, and being able to decipher that. That's probably a whole nother piece of training that I don't know is happening or should happen, but how do you try to manage it all? There's a term called Parkinsonism, and then we've got Parkinson's disease. What's the difference between the two? Or are you comfortable speaking about the difference between the two?
Incredible questions. I did research. Like I said, I might have a PhD, I have three
Right.
masters. I'm a cop and I'm an attorney. Always have a lot to learn. So I think you have to be an individual who is open
Mm-hmm.
to keep learning. So I never the only degree we joke is I don't. My father has, but I never did the MD. But if I did, I
Right.
would have specialized in Parkinson's. I don't think it would have been frustrating because I
Mm-hmm.
would have wanted to help everyone, and it's not your
Right.
limit. But I believe Parkinson's is what my mother had, and we discussed Parkinsonian. The other one is where you have a disease, or there are several conditions that could mimic the disease of Parkinson's, but it's not
Mm-hmm.
actually diagnosed as Parkinson's. So
Got it.
if you wanted to get more into it, I wouldn't be a neurologist would be better. But
Right. Right.
I I only learned about it actually a few months ago in one of
Mm-hmm.
that's why I love the interviews, because I've been able to interview people who have Parkinson's, people who have fathers and mothers with Parkinson,
Yeah.
people who are actually, running national organizations, all the way to, grassroots like the American Parkinson's Disease Association, who I'm actually on the committee for their yearly walk. So we're having that
Mm.
November, and this morning just happened to be sitting in that walk. Those are the most inspiring things
Mm.
I've ever had in my life, because we have a table at them. We'll donate. We've raised about $10,000 almost for them, and it's mainly our family just donates. But because I'm not the best at fundraising, I don't like asking
Mm.
people for money. I
I
need to
know it's a
learn.
hard thing, but so needed. I think people want to give to good causes, so keep up the
We have
hope.
it's funny because we have a table, and no offense to others, but it's mostly medical companies.
Mm-hmm.
So we're in
Mm-hmm.
the middle, and then I hand out bands, which if you look at the website, I usually have it with me, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm in a different room. But the band just says "Together for Sharon" in memory of my mother and Parkinson's awareness. So we'll pass them out for free, and we don't ask for anything. And people are shocked at first. They're like, "What is this? Why?" And they're just shocked that there's someone out there. Like my family and myself
Yeah.
just want to tell individuals listening, if you have Parkinson's or a loved one or caretaker, that
Mm-hmm.
we just send our love and support, and that there is always someone out there like us that's thinking about them and love them. And so after the person finds out, they come and hug us, and they actually
Mm.
start crying because they realize what we're there for. But the band story is an interesting one if you want me to tell you that one. But
Yeah, please share.
my mother again passed really shockingly out of nowhere, and I did a whole speech at the funeral, which was probably again the toughest thing I've ever done.
Mm.
But so I like to give people something to remember her by. So we put together this band, and it just again, let me see if I could find as we talk. But I put it together really just thinking that the people at the this is it. I don't know if you'll be able to see it. You can probably see that. I don't know
Oh,
if
yes. And
that's
I
too.
and I've seen the bands on LinkedIn when you've shared. They're great. Yeah.
Oh, word. There it is. So
Oh,
anyway,
there
that's
we go. Yes.
if you just go to the website there, and we kind of cut back on it because we self-pay. But so I wanted to give just a few people the band at the funeral. It was really nice and touching that so many people showed up. There were a lot of people.
Mm.
So we left, and that was the end of it. For some reason, my sister-in-law, now her husband at the time boyfriend, for some reason he sent a picture, and on the picture was just the Together for Sharon band and just his hand, like he wasn't in it. And it kind of hit me. It's like 2020, people love to get involved in viral things, but not be. They want to be private, so they don't want their face in it or where they are, location
Right.
for
Right.
safety. I'm like, wait a minute, he has his hand, he's in a band, it's a cool background, why not? I'll do it. So I started doing it everywhere I went, like Disney World, to the basketball court, to the gym. I would just put the band, and I'd say we're all in this together. All of a sudden that went really viral. We had people around the country, like it was amazing. Even Willie Geist, the NBC host
Mm.
event the Today Show, I think, or Good Morning America. His
Mm-hmm.
wife somehow saw it and she wore it. So it was just incredible, inspiring.
Wow.
We kind of cut back because we were paying for them. Like I paid
Mm-hmm.
to ship them. I didn't want money.
It's a lot,
So,
yeah.
but it was a great experience. That's really what started Together for Sharon. Now, again, I'm more focused on interviews because it's about other people. But
Yeah.
I'll mail you one too if you send me your address later.
Oh, thank
But
you.
it was just nice to know that, again, just like the interviews, if one person remembered my mother or learned her story,
Mm,
I feel like I've done my job. And I find that now we're reaching over 50,000 people and just growing. I can't even handle it some days, but again, like I said earlier, there's some nights I just don't sleep
yeah.
thinking about how to help people.
Yeah.
That's
Keeping her memory alive. And from your experience as a caregiver, what would you share with people that are caring for a loved one with Parkinson's? What did you learn about yourself? What do you want to impart your wisdom for others that are maybe in that same situation?
I have a few quotes. I feel like together our voices are always stronger. So you always want to have support, like even us talking today.
Mm-hmm.
I might have a story and you have an incredible podcast, but not together. We share it and it reaches so many more people.
Mm-hmm.
I like to say I'm one son, one person, and only one individual, but I find that if I, again, join with others, it's just much more powerful. But if you're going through it, you have to take somehow a minute to work out or run or get your mind off it. But I can't lie, it was impossible for me. So,
Yeah.
even when I did try and do work, it was still on my mind. So there's no secret, unfortunately, that $1 million tip or anything. It just you got to be there for your loved one. You want to support them either through the tough times. There were times I got angry. I'm not going to lie, and
Mm-hmm.
frustrated, and
Mm-hmm.
not at my mother, but at the disease. And just you have to keep pushing through. Luckily, again, I had a supportive family who took care of the kids. I wasn't really around much for my family. I was between work and school, and my mother. It was really my main priority. And we don't often get a chance. If I have time, I need to add a big presentation just on the financial burden.
Mm,
But we were spending $12,000 a month just for caretakers to come
wow.
in. She needed round the clock help because she had also stomach issues, and
Yeah.
just it was a nightmare, the whole thing. And we had to keep firing companies because they just sent people who didn't, just didn't understand Parkinson's, which you'd think
Mm-hmm.
they would. But
Mm-hmm.
that was not easy to deal with that. I had to rush over all the time because nobody was ever going to harm my mother. That was my
Yeah.
main person. So if
Yeah.
anyone, mess with her, and then sometimes again, I got dizzy because she wasn't
Mm,
really telling the truth, but it wasn't her, it was the condition.
yeah.
But I always believed her. So it was, it's like a battle. Like you see the cartoons with the two
Right.
guys,
Yeah.
uh, girls on, like one was this and that one said that.
Mm-hmm.
I was
Mm-hmm.
times where I was like honestly burnt out and dizzy that I just kept, fighting for her. And you can't ever
Mm,
for them. And,
yeah.
we had a, loving relationship, but, it was funny every Sunday we'd argue out loud about where to order food from because
Oh, there were some opinions. Yeah.
for like 8 people is a nightmare in my family.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I'm
But,
sure.
so I miss those times, like now we look back, I wish I didn't yell about food, but I did
Yeah.
enjoy it and we laughed about it. And, just the saddest part is that, any accomplishment I have now, even, Together for Sharon,
Mm.
or me and my wife, I love music. We went a few weeks ago to see Lionel Richie. That'll bring back, my
Oh,
mother brought me up I'm from Brooklyn, New York. I used to be
yeah.
tortured in the car with Barry, Barry Manilow, Lionel Richie,
There
Kenny
we
G, and Michael
go.
Bolton. And now today I bought records. I
Oh
listen to all of them.
gosh, I'm sure memory is or music is so powerful in bringing back those memories for sure.
Yeah, but when we saw the concert on the drive home, first person I would call is my mother.
Oh,
And the thing I look back on now, she was so unselfish because here I am bragging I got to see all these people, and she loved hearing about it. And the worst feeling before I met my wife, 11 years ago, I used to take my mother on dates. Like I bought a beautiful Corvette. I was finally made it.
yeah.
And I picked her up, and just the two of us, my mother and I would go to these beautiful places. Then I met my wife, and my mother always got mad because I took you know,
Yeah,
see the
she
three
was the woman. Oh, what
see the
special relationship.
the three of us, I didn't ditch my mom. I don't want to know, but
Yeah.
we ended up three. But I miss those times where we would just eat, the three of us, my wife, my mother,
Mm-hmm.
just talk about life and stories. And
Mm.
those are I do regret one thing, and that's I wish she was too sick at the last year,
Mm.
but I wish we had done like we're doing. If I had thought of, I didn't realize she was gonna, pass, but I wish I
Right.
had videotaped a lot more of her stories, because writing my book now, it's not easy because I have to call
Right.
family, but just, remembering my grandfather who I was named after and
Yeah.
our childhood, and I'm getting it, but it's not as much fun as it
Yeah.
would learning from her.
Collecting the family history is something that we, from our loved ones' perspective, get from them. And I'm glad you're able to get information from other people, but it is a good reminder to capture that and ask those questions while we can. Is there any specific lesson or memory that you learned from your mom as she's guided your work in this Parkinson's awareness? Obviously, she raised a caring son who has a bigger purpose to bring awareness to this disease. But anything you would like to share about her memory?
I mean, she just told me never to give up, always fight.
Mhm.
When you're tired of fighting, you fight more. And again, like I said earlier, she would tell me not to do all this. She would say, spend your time with your family and, your life.
Mm.
Again, I don't find that I would be who I am today if it wasn't for her. So I'll never stop fighting. And it's not just for her now. Again, it's a bigger picture. It's about all the people I meet, that I come in contact with, and also learn from on a daily basis. This type of world, when you get into it, you don't leave it because it's not
Mm.
ended. And the only time, like some of the big organizations I love, we want to be put out of business. Like, so once,
Right.
if and when there's a cure, I'll have done my job and I'll rest. But in
Mhm.
my brain, in an ironic way, my mother would have only been about like 73 or 4. And I kind of selfishly think that in the US in 2023, we can live till 85 or more. So until
Mhm.
she would have, her birthday is actually September 28th. So it's a
Mm.
very tough day. We go visit her graveyard, but at the grave, but until she will turn at least 85. And not saying I'll be stopping then, but I'll feel a little in my heart that it would have,
Yeah.
been okay at that point, but I don't feel it's okay yet.
Right.
Plus, the worst feeling is that I know she was in a better place the night she passed, because she was in horrible pain and things that
Mm.
even like, and I don't want to compare, but wartime, medicines didn't help her. Like they, had her on morphine and things, and
Mm.
just horrible. So obviously, again, people say it's better because didn't suffer, but selfishly, I wish she was still here
Yeah.
without the without the suffering.
Yeah. With all of your interviews, with all of these people you've been able to meet, I'm sure from around the world, what are you hearing? Do you have a couple that stand out that you just were inspired by, some of those common challenges or experience that you were able to share with each other?
Yeah, some who have, I learned that there's something called early young onset, which was shocking. So that's
Mm.
individuals like Michael J. Fox who get diagnosed really young, like even at 30 or 35. And I'm meeting a lot of individuals. I mean, I'm just turned 46, so people
Mm.
have been diagnosed before, so it could happen to me too. I'm not,
Mm-hmm.
but I always think maybe I'll get it. It's not genetic. They think it could be from pesticides and the environment. But again, I'm not a doctor on that. There are a lot of studies that I also agree with, because my mother lived in a house that was beautiful, but she never kept it up. They had termites, they had pesticides, they bombed it like in the old days. People did things with the and ants and things that we don't do today.
Mm-hmm.
And now everything's more environmental friendly, but I think that definitely caused something. But so the young early onset is frightening, but seeing the most impactful thing is seeing how individuals are coping with it, are fighting, and are able to have a life. Also, the DBS surgery is a breakthrough where there's people who I have interviewed who, and I don't know much about it because my mother didn't want it. And again, that's for more like external tremors. And some people it works, but one individual I interviewed, he has it, and he said he wished he had known about it 10 years
Mm.
earlier, because it changed his life, and he's been able to have a life now for
Mm-hmm.
5 years. 10 years before he couldn't. So
Yeah.
there's big time studies, and scientific companies out there who I'm trying to interview. They're hard to get, but like
Mm-hmm.
I forgot some of the names, but they're out there. But they do the entire, deep brain uh,
Mm-hmm.
simulation surgery, and it changes lives. But again, I can't speak directly. We didn't do that.
Yeah.
But so those are just a few, and also just inspiring people. Like, not forget me. There's people out there also working 24/7, raising money. There's push-ups for Parkinson's. A good friend of mine,
Mm.
he does push-ups, and it says, every time you want to give up, he does more. There's a drive toward a cure. We did a podcast with Deb. She's an individual who uses, race cars around the United States, and she
Mm.
does some incredible, like, movie-like fundraising. Then there's Pints for Parkinson's. It's just incredible. There's Tai Chi for Parkinson's. It's like everything.
Ah.
But what my website is actually becoming is not. It's just incredible to me, and I don't want to gloat, or it's a
Mm-hmm.
place to wish people would know, because now they can go. They can literally scroll on the website. If you go TogetherForSharon.com and click on interviews, I'm trying to make it easy for
Mm.
people, but you can just scroll and see stories of other people just like them,
Mm-hmm.
who are really in the fight and doing great things. I was able to speak to one of a international spokesperson, Larry Gifford, who's one of the biggest inspirations I met. Also, Jimmy Cho, who is actually, he's pretty well known. He's still out there fighting. He was on American Warrior Ninja, so he's really
Mm.
famous. But they're all such down to earth, great people. They look like they're untouchable on TV, but when you get to know them, if you have an opportunity, they're just, regular people
Yeah.
like us.
Very
But they
personable.
unfortunately have an extraordinary, disease that they're battling daily.
Right. I love.
Also, doesn't affect just the person. That's the biggest
Right.
thing that people forget. It
Mm-hmm.
affects the entire family, and that's the hardest part.
It is. It is. As you were sharing about all the work that people were doing, I couldn't help but think of, I love the creativity that I'm sure each person took what they were passionate about and then fueled it to raise awareness and funds, which is doable, right? We all have that inside of us as we are fighting for those causes. And the bigger conversation around this awareness for the general public, maybe people listening that don't have that direct experience with Parkinson's, how can we support and contribute to the cause? And what organizations or resources do you recommend for people wanting to learn more? All of that. Yeah.
Anything to accept that we want them to know we love them and support them. We're here for them, to even just to talk. But
Mm-hmm.
it's funny. One time I was at one of those walks. Someone handed $5. I rushed home and donated it and put their name and gave them a receipt on the
Oh.
page. I don't want anything. But so the big one, if you go to our website again, we don't accept it. So we link, though, under donations to 3 organizations, but I recommend they should do
Mm-hmm.
their own research. And there's just so many, out there,
Right.
and they're all doing great things.
Mm-hmm.
But you want to research. But I always recommend, for myself, I've donated to the Michael J. Fox Foundation. You can donate directly to in memory of my mother on our site. That's
Mm.
why I always like when people go to our site, because if you go to them, that's fine, but it'll never go under my mom's name. And then there's the Parkinson's Foundation, which I really enjoy. They're national. We actually were all ready for a walk a few months ago in South Florida. So excited. They were all set up. I had my tables, my bands. And unfortunately, a tornado decided to
Oh
come. And it
no.
was like, while we were all standing there, they had to be canceled. And that was
Oh.
like heartbreaking, because I really get excited. And it's just once a year, which is really not enough. So before we end later, my biggest problem still is awareness, and even in my location, there's just not enough. But and then the big one for me is the American Parkinson's Disease Association. They're
Mm-hmm.
more of a grassroots, but we've again raised $10,000 in 3 years.
Mm.
The reason I really like them is they showed up when my mother was really sick.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the others just weren't here. They're around the United States, so they didn't have a presence, and they actually showed up at our house. They offered classes. It was too late, but they still, just knowing that they showed up meant a lot.
Mm.
So they're out there, but that's the 3 that I recommend. And again, there's others, but
Yeah.
not to that question, but to me, I'm in South Florida, so Boca Raton is one of the high rate elderly people
Mm-hmm.
retire here. a large amount of individuals have Parkinson's, but I find it's just not enough. And that's why I'm trying to get out there. But, they have a few organizations, but they only do like one thing a year. I'm hoping now COVID's gone. That could be why that they're going to start
Right.
doing more. It's a great thing that my alma mater, Florida Atlantic University, their medical school has a program and they offer courses, but still needs to grow because there's only a
Mhm.
few people at each one. I did some stories on my website on their events to try and get more word out. But
Mm.
the biggest problem still is awareness, and there's just not enough live events, in my opinion.
Right. Well, I'm hoping that grows, like you said, now that we're past COVID a little bit.
But we thought about like we're just a website, and I thought about incorporating on my accountant didn't want me to because it's.
Hmm.
But I'm hoping maybe when I'm older and if I have time retired, we would actually put our own events. But
Yeah.
it's extremely hard with three children
Oh, I
being in
know. Seasons
career
of
long.
life. Yeah, seasons of life.
I've had my own medical issues with my back, so
Mm.
it's hard to get out as much anymore.
Right, right. It is. Well, as a final message and wanting to know what legacy do you hope Together for Sharon leaves behind for those future generations?
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I joke with my daughter's going to turn 11, the 30th this month. I have three kids. I forget their birthdays. I've been
Mm,
trying to memorize,
yeah.
but what we remember and what we can't remember. But my dream is really, and tell my wife all the time when I'm no longer with them, I'm praying and hoping that they'll continue it on. I have three children,
Mhm.
and my daughter knew my mother the most. My littlest one might not remember her because she was so small. My middle son, he remembers her. But I remember I have a video, it's sickening too, the night we came home from. I'm glad we're finishing things because it's emotional, but
Yeah.
and I share it because I want people to see. But when we came home from the funeral, I remember seeing my wife and my daughter just crying, and it was like, imagine your grandmother is no
Mm.
longer ever going to be there, and they had a really close bond because my mother always wanted a daughter. She had two sons, me and my
Oh,
brother. The first thing she did when she found out we're having a daughter is bought a little doll. So my mother like always wanted to dress up to her
yeah.
dresses, and so she did get her chance. And I
Good.
just hope to, on a last note, that
Mhm.
this continues on beyond me. Again, I hope someday maybe we'll incorporate or become a foundation. But I
Mhm.
would like to also give uh, scholarships to future doctors, maybe who will
Mm.
study Parkinson. So I have some ideas, but the problem is really the time, and I already putting 24/7 into what we're doing. I
Yeah.
hope to keep doing interviews. It's not easy because there are people, and completely understand, that don't want to be,
Mm.
known and don't want to be on the internet. So
Yeah.
that's, tough some days, but there are many that do. But after doing this for 2, 3 months, speaking
Mhm.
to, actually, it's about 250 people,
It's
I'm kind
incredible.
of need a little break, but
Yeah.
I do more email stuff now rather than just speaking. I do call people to thank them, but because
Mhm.
I like to speak, the voice touch, but I just, the time is tough, but I don't want to ever stop. I love it.
Well,
I love
thank
meeting
you.
like you and
Yeah.
your listeners, and just means the world in my heart to me and my family, just to have the opportunity to speak to you. And hopefully, like I said, if even one person learns about Sharon, my mother, then, we've done everything we can do.
Yeah, thank you for sharing your story and so openly and having this advocacy and awareness passion that will hopefully inspire many people to want to learn and do more and give back. So, thank you for being here today.
No problem. Thank you for your time and the opportunity. Again, I'm going to share it too around the world forever.
Thank you so much. Thank you for listening today. If you enjoyed our episode, please subscribe and give us 5 stars. In all honesty, we'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much for listening to our episode.